Hi everyone! It is so good to see you here. My name is Renee, and I pray that we might grow in our faith together. In this video, I would like to discuss all the Christian books that I read in 2024. Of course, besides reading the one book, the Bible. But yeah, in this video, I would like to give you guys some recommendations for books that I read and that I think you might like as well. Since Dutch is my native language, there will be books in my list that are in Dutch, but if there is a translation available, I will let you know. But first, I would like to acknowledge that this YouTube channel recently surpassed 200 subscribers, and of course this makes me very happy, but I would like to say all glory to God, all thanks to God. He is the one that gave me the inspiration to start this channel. He is the one that gives me inspiration and put topics on my heart that I would like to share and that I would like to talk about. So all glory to him, and I'm just very thankful that this channel can be a place of worship, that this channel can be a place where we can grow in our faith together, and I hope that people consider me as like a friend in faith, even though it's only online. But yeah, let's just get into the video. Yes, in 2023, I started getting back into reading books after not touching a book in years. It really was a turning point. 2023 really was a turning point for me, and I really started getting back into liking reading books, because I always disliked reading books. I never took the time, and after taking the time, I realized it's a lot of fun to read books and to like get more information and immerse yourself. So during that year, I read 5 books, and 2024 I read 20 books in total. So it more than doubled. And out of those 20 books, 18 were faith based books. So I'm going to go over them in the order in which I read them during the year. And yeah, I will just tell you a little bit about them and my rating, and let's just get into them. The first book that I read in 2024 is this one, Een warme band met God, which is, as you can see, a Dutch book. It's written by Mieke de Boer Zonneschijn, and she is a psychologist that also is a Christian. And what this book is about is that she did kind of a research on how your relationship with your parents or caregivers relates to the relationship that you will be able to have with God. So she's trying to answer the question, like, if you have a bad relationship with parents or like a turbulent relationship with your parents, is it possible that you could also have trouble with your relationship with God as well? It's really interesting, and it's written out of like a psychology point, which I really like. I'm like really eager to learn more about that, even though it's not my major or anything. It's just something that I take interest in. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have an English translation, which is, I'm kind of sad about it, because I do really recommend this book, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads. And if you want to follow me on Goodreads, please do so. Send me a request. I'm happy to follow more people and share more books and reviews and stuff like that. So, but yeah, unfortunately this doesn't have an English translation, but I do really recommend it. Then the next book that I read in 2024 is Hoe kun je Gods stem verstaan? This book is written by Pete Gregg, and this one does have an English translation, and it's called How to Hear God's Voice, but I read it in Dutch. I bought it at an Alpha convention. I saw it and I was immediately intrigued. And I later found out that Pete Gregg is one of the owners, or at least the owner of 24/7 prayer. Sorry. So that's really cool. I didn't know anything about the author beforehand, but the title really spoke to me. I also gave this book a 4 out of 5. I do have to say it was a little bit difficult to read for me personally. I really had to concentrate on what it was saying. So I think that I might give this one a reread because of it. And I might want to take notes while I reread this book. But however, I really recommend this book also because it's just very interesting. And it's just really helpful to learn more about how to hear God's voice through the busyness of life. Then the next one I read on my e-reader. I have a Kobo e-reader. I think it's the Sage. I specifically got this e-reader because it has a pen with it, and I really like to take notes in my books and just annotate and highlight and stuff like that. So the pen is really useful for that, and you're able to do that with this e-reader. The next book that I read is Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen. Not sure if this is able to show since there might be a glare, but I read this book on here. I have heard a lot of really good things about this book, so I went into it with high expectations, but for some reason I really felt kind of let down. It wasn't really what I was looking for or what I was expecting, and that's the reason why I gave this book a 3 out of 5. It's still not a bad book, but I expected there to be more pinpoints and guidelines and things to help me get out of my head more, but for me it just didn't really help me as much. It's beautifully written, and there's just nothing bad. I have nothing bad to say about the author or about the book itself, but it didn't really work for me. So, and that kind of happens with books sometimes. So yeah, that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. But if you are curious about this book, totally feel free to read it, and don't let my opinion stop you or anything. And that goes for every book that I will be talking about in this video. Then the next book that I read, or kind of it's also a study book, is the book What Does It Mean to Be Chosen? And this one is written by Amanda Jenkins and Dallas Jenkins. And if you're familiar with the name Dallas Jenkins, it's the producer of The Chosen, the series about Jesus. And this kind of correlates with season 1 of the series. So you kind of go through the series in this book and kind of do a Bible study using the series and the book simultaneously. And it was really fun to do. Also just because I really like the show and watching the show. So this book really spoke to me, and yeah, I just really liked it. That's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. And I do have the other 2. I think there are only 2 more available. I do have the other 2 also, and I'm planning on doing those as well. like reading those and going through those. But yeah, I just really enjoyed doing the exercises and answering the questions for myself and getting to know Jesus more through both like the series and this Bible study. So yeah. Then this book I got as a gift from my aunt. It was on my birthday list, and she gave it to me. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. As you can see, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's a little rough around the edges, and it's been through a lot. It's been with me on my trip to Korea last year, and I read it while I was on my trip. I finished it while I was on my trip. It's just, I really want to reread this book as well, because I feel like if I were to make notes while reading it, I would like really take the information. I would take it in more. But I really love this book. I recommended it to my friends as well. You also have like a Dutch translation, so I really I also inspired my aunt to buy one for herself, but her English isn't, well, it's not as advanced, so she bought the Dutch translation for herself. Well, she bought this one for me, so I'm really happy that I also like get to inspire people to read more. And she also really liked the book, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5, and I do recommend this book, especially if you kind of want to learn more on how to slow down during your busy life. And it's also a little bit about how Jesus lived and how he managed to slow down even though he was busy as well. So it's really inspiring to read about that. I do have to admit that that's the reason why I didn't give it a 5 out of 5. I really had to get used to the writing style. When I first started reading, it's just, I don't think I can really like show you what I mean, but it's just the writing style really caught me off guard at first. John Mark Comer really writes in short chapters, short passages, and it's just very the page wasn't entirely filled. Normally when you read a book, or what you expect when you read a book, is the page to be like one block of like full of text, and in this book it's not like that at all, so that really caught me off guard. But once I like read the first chapter, I really got over it, but it took me a little bit of time to get used to it. But nonetheless, I really like this book, and I do highly recommend it to anyone basically. So yeah, the next book that I read is kind of a feel-good book, if you could call it that. I also read this one on my e-reader, as you can see. It's called Goedheid voor het oprapen, and it's written by Margriet van der Kooi. And this particular book talks about seeing the good in people and seeing the goodness of God displayed in a broken world. And so you kind of go on a journey with the author, and you kind of see through their lens how they see the world and how they see the goodness of God in other people. And it's just a really feel-good book. I really enjoyed reading it. It really brought a smile to my face, and it really inspired me. And unfortunately, it's not available in English, but yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I just really enjoyed reading it. It's not a very long book to read, and it's just a very easy read, and I just really enjoyed it. The next book that I read is Dopen en Laten Dopen by Evert van de Pol, which is, as you can hear, a Dutch book and a Dutch author. I read this kind of as a Bible study for the young adult group that I'm in. I'm one of the leaders of the adult group, and one of the people in the group was going to get baptized because this book is about baptizing and why to baptize, why not. And it also talks about the baptizing of children and where it originates from, and it just talks about that subject and really explains a lot. I gave this book a 3 out of 5. It was not a hard read, but it was very biased. And this book is presented as if it's not a biased book, but when you read it, you realize that the author is very much biased and really, even though he gives information about the origin of baptizing and baptizing children and baptizing like adults and stuff like that, he really lets his opinion, his personal opinion, shine through. So that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. This book is not available in English, unfortunately, but it was just a very interesting read nonetheless. After kind of reading a more informative book, I wanted to read a kind of a inspirational book, a book of encouragement. This book is called Exel, and it's made by Lifeprint and written by Tineke Tuinder, if I'm not mistaken. You don't really see it on here, but this book is very thin, and it's kind of a book with just short stories and short poems, and it's just meant to be inspirational. I got this as a gift for my confirmation, and I haven't read it before, so this was the first time that I read it. I think I already said it, I'm sorry. But it's not available in English, and it's just, I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I do find it really encouraging and inspiring, and it's just a really easy and short read, and it's just a good book to like flip through, and I just liked it. Another book that I read on my e-reader is also a book that I gifted to the person who got baptized, like in the young adult group that I'm in. It's called Bmet Bible by Nicholas Sint-Tobin. Unfortunately for this one, there's also not an English translation, but I do think that there are similar books in English that tell you about how to pray using the Bible. It's based on a type of study that they use in some monasteries. So Ignatius von Loyola. I will try to find the English version of that, but I think there are also like English books that would basically talk about the same thing. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 because it was a little long-winded, and I felt like it didn't really explain enough for me about how to really use the Bible to pray. It could have been made more practical and made from a more of a practical standpoint. This was just giving you dry information, and it wasn't really challenging you, or at least I felt like it wasn't really challenging you to actually put it into practice and how to put it into practice, basically. So yeah, but sometimes that happens, and I do really hope that the person that I gave it to liked it better than I did. Maybe it was just the expectation that I had for this book beforehand that really threw things off. After that, I read another book by John Mark Comer called Practicing the Way, and I've talked about this book briefly in another video. I don't remember what video it was exactly, but I already praised this book so much in that video. I feel like this is the one book that I gave a 5 out of 5 star rating. I truly love this book. It's so inspiring. I highly recommend it when you want to get closer to Jesus and you want to know how to follow Jesus, because this book really puts it in basically in practice. I mean, it's called Practicing the Way, but I feel like John Mark Comer is very good at hitting the nail on the head when it comes to pointing out the different mistakes and problems within the modern Christian church. And he also talks about the current way of life, the current way of society, and how we currently live in a society that is way too hurried, which the other book that I read also talks about. But this book really goes into depth about how Jesus can be used as a bigger example in your life and how to live your life. And it talks about how to really follow him and what will change or what could change in your life when you decide to fully follow him and practice the way, basically. It talks about how you can be formed into a person of love, and that's what Jesus stood for. So I really recommend this book. I can't recommend it enough. I really feel like it changed my perspective. And we're currently, because he also has a course called Practicing the Way as well, we're currently doing the course with our young adult group. And even after reading the book and starting the course, it's so eye-opening still for me. So if you want to do the course, I also really highly recommend it. You can do it alone, you can do it with people. It can be easier to do it with people, so you can like help each other, pull each other up, and encourage each other. But yeah, I love this book. It's just really good. The next book that I read was also on my e-reader, and it's called You're Made for a God-Sized Dream, and it's by Holly Girth. And I was really, at that moment in time, I was really struggling with what path I should take, and if the dream I was having, the dream of like going to Korea for a year and working there, living there for a year, really was a dream put on my heart by God, or if it was something of a selfish desire that I had. So I thought reading this book would help me, but at first I was like, oh, this makes sense. And it's nothing bad about this book or the author. It was completely my doing, but it really left me more confused, because after reading the book I was trying to kind of figure out ways to confirm and to justify that this was a dream that God put in my heart. But in the end, I do really feel that it was a dream that God put in my heart, but I didn't really come to realize that after reading this book. That's what I mean to say. I still really like the book. It's really inspiring, but I gave it a 3 out of 5 because it also can be a bit dangerous, because like I said, this book prompted me to try and find justifications to be like, oh, this is a sign of God, this is a sign of God. Well, it was still up for debate. So, but it's really well written and it's really nice, and it's just a good book overall. But be careful is what I would like to say about this book. In September 2023, I started using this devotional called Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. I think this is one of the most popular devotional books out there. They have so much different versions. They have like a pink one, they have one for children if I'm not mistaken, they have one for women. They have like a journaling version. This is the, well, I would say like normal version. At first, I also put in sticky notes. As you can see here, I wrote down. I did do that every day though. I wrote down the scriptures, and then I wrote a personal prayer down as well. So this book has seen some love, and as you can see, I wasn't joking when I said I liked like annotating, marking things up, and I really made it my own. And I gave this book a 3 out of 5, and the reason is because it got kind of redundant at the end. At the end I was like, oh, I keep reading the same scripture, and it felt like there was nothing new to it anymore. But it's still very inspiring, and it's still really nicely written. It's kind of written in a way where Jesus is actually talking to you and encouraging you, which is a very nice and personal touch. But in the end, it feels like he kept repeating himself a lot. Not that, but I don't mean that Jesus repeated himself a lot, but I mean like it was written as if he was repeating himself a lot, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. But it's still a good book in my opinion. And then I decided to read this book, Wie volg jij? By Sadie Robertson Huff. And there is an English version available for this one called Who Are You Following? I really liked reading this book. It was really an eye-opening book for me, and it really gave an insight of the dangers of social media, which are obvious that they're there, but also how social media can keep you away from God, and how to kind of change the perspective and how to follow Jesus more. So I really like that perspective in this book, and it's really easy to read. It's just an easy read, and it's really inspiring. Sadie also talks about some of her personal things that she's been through, and it's really relatable in my opinion. So that's why I gave this book a 4 out of 5, and yeah, I recommend it. It's a good book. After that, I decided to read Slow Food. This is a Dutch book, even though the title is in English. Unfortunately, like really unfortunately, there isn't an English version available. But this book is about the most popular and well-known prayer in the Bible that Jesus taught his disciples. Like the one we always say in church and pray before we eat. And it's kind of... Sorry, that's the dog. He's stretching. But this book is breaking down the different sentences and terms in the prayer. It's written by Klaartje Kruijf. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, 6 people get introduced in this book. And they go into conversation with each other about how they perceive the prayer, what they learned throughout their years of being a Christian. There's one person that's Jewish, there's one person that is a Muslim, and they just discuss the prayer and kind of break it down and share their own opinions on it and their own findings on it. And it's just really eye-opening to see the different perspectives. As you can see, I really like the book because I put sticky notes in it. But it's just the only thing that made me go down 1 star is there wasn't really a conclusion or a well-written end to the book. It was just like, and then they said amen, and that's it. basically. So that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5 instead of a 4 out of 5. But it was just it felt very human, and I just really liked reading this book. It was very different from all the other books that I've read so far. After that, I read this small book. I got this as a gift, kind of a Christmas gift, I think, from my aunt. It's called Comfort for Troubled Christians by G.C. Brumfield. And this book is the one that I gave the lowest rating out of all of the books that I read. And that's because when I read the title, I really thought that this was going to be a very uplifting, encouraging, and inspiring book. However, the reason why I gave it a 2 out of 5 instead of like a higher rating is because it really felt like it was read from a tough luck perspective. And I probably wouldn't give this book or recommend this book for people that are currently suffering or currently in a very tough situation or currently very sad or dealing with grief or anything, because this book really, it didn't give me the feeling that the writer, like the author, was really empathetic with people who were suffering. And for me, it kind of was written from a perspective of, but God is always there, so don't be sad. Which is true, but in this situation and this book, it felt kind of short-sighted, if you know what I mean. So, if you are in a good and happy mood, I would give this one a read. It's really, I think that you can still take away a good message from this book, but I wouldn't necessarily give it to someone who is currently stuck in a rut. Because I don't think you would come off as empathetic and compassionate with this book. But of course, that's also my personal opinion. I think there might be people that don't agree with that at all, but for me it felt a bit it felt a bit like tough luck, my dude. You can just pray about it and it will all be okay. So yeah. Then to lift up my spirit more, I read this book, Nooit Alleen. It's another Dutch book. Unfortunately, there is not an English version available. It's written by Aletta Corneef, and it has very pretty illustrations in it. And like the one that I showed you before called Exel, this one has short poems, short text, short passages, and it's just a very uplifting, inspiring, and encouraging book. This one I also got as a gift for my confirmation, so up until that point I hadn't read it, and now I have, and I think this is one of those books that when you feel down you can definitely like give it another read and open it and flip through it and just feel inspired and comforted all over again. That's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. The second to last book that I read is this one. It's called In the Lord I Take Refuge. It's by Dane C. Ortland. And I found this book through a mutual on Instagram, and I saw like this book. I saw a passage from this book and I was immediately inspired, and I was like, where did you get this book? What is this book called? Because I think that this might be something for me. And she was sweet enough to send me a link, and I bought it on Amazon, and the rest is history. This is a 150 daily devotional through the Psalms, but I didn't really use it as that. Instead, I just read like basically 5 or 10 psalms and devotionals per day. And I do plan on using this for a Bible study in my psalms, my Bible as well, because it really gave me more insights and background information on the psalms, and that's what I really liked about this. It really gave me more context and helped me in, other than, of course, the inspiring message within the book. It really also taught me stuff. So yeah, I recommend this book, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. And the last book that I finished in 2024 is this one. It's called Gods Genade Elke Dag by Grace. And it's a Dutch book again. Unfortunately, this isn't available in English. I got this book from my grandparents, who gave it to me for my confirmation. And in the end, they ended up buying this book as well for themselves, because they really liked, when they were searching for a gift for me. My grandma, she kind of flipped through it and she felt inspired, so she bought one herself, and we both used it as a devotional last year. So I used this one as a daily devotional, and I read one devotional each day after having dinner. So I read it out loud with my family, and we would just all read together. I gave this one a 3 out of 5, and that's because sometimes the writing style didn't really suit me. Another thing that really made the rating go down for me, at least, is the font. Especially when there's a dim lighting, the font is really difficult to read. But other than that, the message is great, of course, and it really talked about God's grace every day, and so the message I loved, and it's a good book nonetheless. So those were all the books that I read last year. I do have another virtual bookshelf for 2025. I'm currently reading 5 books at once, which I wouldn't recommend, but sometimes that happens. Or I think it's even 6 at this point. But I'm almost finished with one. I think I currently have on my TBR 23 books, if I'm not mistaken. I'm planning on reading as much physical books as I can before I go to Korea this year, because I don't want to take them all with me in my luggage. It would be too heavy. If you are interested in a video about what kind of books I would like to read this year, let me know in the comments below, because I would love to do a video about that if you're interested in that. And that's all I have for this video. I pray you have a blessed week, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!